started. All right, and again, welcome from my side. My name is Dominic Gerritz, and I'm happy to welcome you to our webinar for ThinkOwl. So what can you expect today? First of all, I'd like to give you a very high-level overview of the challenges that we continuously see when working with our customers in a contact center, in a call center, but also in all other kinds of businesses that are communication related, that are focusing on serving a customer. Then I'll give you a quick overview of a few of the highlights of ThinkOwl, also trying to point out, okay, what is exactly artificial intelligence, and especially how does it work within ThinkOwl, but especially how does it help you to make your contact center more productive, save costs, and so on. But we will see this later on. And at the end of today's session, I also like to have a quick look into the AI and analytics functionalities of Discover, also pointing out a couple of features, what AI can do in terms of reporting for supervisors, for managers, and so on. All right, let's get started. Typical challenges. So what do we see typically when we go to a customer, when a customer approaches us and say, hey, I have a problem with my contact center? One of the things I see very often is what I would briefly describe as copying and pasting. So pretty much agents that have their PowerPoint slides, that have their maybe Word documents or even text snippets on their desktop that they constantly use to pretty much copy and paste answers to customers. And you can directly see that this is a huge problem here, because it's pretty much there is no quality in the outgoing correspondence. Copy paste from a Word document into an email doesn't make any sense. It's just time consuming, and the customer satisfaction is in doubt, I would say here. The second thing is, what you will see is that in many contact centers nowadays, you have one tool for one channel. So you have one for Facebook, one for email, one for Twitter, one for Slack, and so on. And if you're lucky, you maybe have one tool for one or two channels, but it's really generating these what we call communication silos. So all this knowledge you, for example, generate by using or by serving a customer on Facebook is lost when you serve the same customer actually on Twitter or, for example, email, because it's pretty much in that one system and it's completely separated from everything else. So it's pretty much knowledge that's being lost throughout the daily work. Then, as said before, we're talking about quality problems. As soon as agents can write or answer customers whatever they want, you can imagine, especially for low to medium skilled agents, this can be a challenge, because they maybe don't answer the way you want it, or they don't use appropriate language, and so on. So this is a big challenge, of course. And to cope with all these problems, with the communication silos, copying, pasting, and also the quality problems, this results in pretty much higher maintenance costs and, of course, higher costs on operations. And maybe the last thing I see a lot, and maybe we'll have a closer look at this at the end, and then we will see why I put it into the challenges here, is that you have usually you have a very limited reporting, because at the moment I assume you can only report on things that you pre-configured or that you predefined before something happens. But there is no kind of responsive reporting of pretty much not a forecasting reporting, but an insight reporting on a real-time basis. And we will also see how we're going to solve that with ThinkOwl. All right, so what can ThinkOwl bring to the table? And as you can imagine, for the problems or for the challenges I just mentioned, ThinkOwl can help you out here, because ThinkOwl is pretty much an omni-channel solution that helps you in sorting, capturing, assigning, and responding to any kind of customer inquiry that comes across all these channels. Talking about not only the social media channel, but also email, or even going back in the time, going to fax or even letters that might come into your contact center. And of course, ThinkOwl makes it smart. What does it mean? ThinkOwl is an AI-based system, and AI-based system means, and we would see this in the next slide, that the system continuously learns from your users. But one more thing I'd like to add on this slide is that what we see within our actual customer base is that as soon as you start using self-learning, artificial intelligence-based systems, you can really increase your productivity up to 60% or even more, depending on your specific use case. Because, and this is now where I want to go to the next slide here, this is where AI comes in play. So artificial intelligence, it sounds complicated, it's hyped in the media and the news, but to be honest, it's very simple from an understanding perspective. So if we just bring it down to one little sentence, I would say, okay, AI, artificial intelligence, is teaching computers to learn from your users. And this is exactly what we do here. So what does it mean? Let's assume there's a new question coming in. The system has never seen before that question. Let's say it's an email. So what does it do? It puts it in front of the user and says, here, please tell me what it is. I have no idea. Your agent then picks up that email. He classifies it. For example, this is a return, or this is a complaint or something like that. Then the user tells, hey, this is this and that customer. He has this customer ID. Maybe there is a serial number or stuff like that. And then the user answers the email to the customer. Regular process. But what happens in the background, and this is what you see with this little circle here, the system learns from that interaction so that the next time a similar email comes in, the system knows what it is, so it's able to classify it. Hey, here's a complaint, for example. By that, it knows which people or which group of people it should put that, it should assign that email to, and it is also able then to extract all the relevant information that you need out of that email and pretty much put it in front of the user so that the user doesn't have to look through the 5-page email of the customer anymore just to identify a few relevant information. All right. As said at the beginning, I don't want to do too much presentation today, so let's jump directly into the system and let me show you how this looks like and how ThinkOwl tries to solve these problems, these challenges I pointed out at the beginning, and especially how artificial intelligence is hidden in the system. All right, therefore, let me go into my browser, because the only thing we need to access ThinkOwl as a cloud-based system is a state-of-the-art browser. So talking about Chrome, talking about Firefox, for example. So you need to log in, and there we go. This is the first thing an agent sees when he logs into ThinkOwl. Let me walk you a little bit through the user interface just to understand what we see in here. So for example, what you see on the left side over here, those are the different channels that are currently connected to my ThinkOwl system. So we're talking, as said, we're talking about email, phone channels, so also ACD integration with all the standard ACD systems you might have in place, talking about Genesis, Avaya, Aspect, stuff like that. Social media integration, chat integration, and so on. So all of this goes into one ThinkOwl system, and what we have over here is pretty much just a quick filter bar that helps you to filter your view onto the different cases you might have in your system. So for example, you can filter by assignee. So for example, I want to only see cases that are directly assigned to myself or to my team. You can filter by due date, you can filter by status, and so on, and a lot of other criteria you can use for filtering. One I like a lot is the so-called involved filter. This is a very specific use case, but quite helpful. Let's assume your colleague answered, or not even answered, he left a comment with a specific email, forwarded that to an internal, to another internal agent, said, here, I had this customer before, problem this and this and that, and so on. So now the customer calls in and wants to say, hey, I have a problem. Then you can go into the system and say, hey, show me all the cases where a certain agent has been involved so far. So without completing the email, without even answering the email, the system is still able to support your user to say, hey, Mr. Smith worked, or my agent, Mr. Smith, worked on this and that email, so it's easier for me to find exactly what was going on. All right, but this is just a quick side note here. So let's talk about the user interface a little bit, and I will then directly jump into a case and also show where AI is hidden in that tool, of course. But first of all, let me elaborate a little bit more on what we call a case management solution, because ThinkOwl is not only a response management solution, it is a case management solution. That means we are trying to introduce a new level of hierarchy into that system, and this is the case because when a customer sends you whatever, an email, a Facebook, a tweet, he has a problem, and this problem causes a case. And independent of how many forth and back communication there's going on, the case will stay in place and it will aggregate all that communication within one case, so that nevertheless what channel you use, nevertheless how many forth and back communication there is with your customer, you will always have one single case. And of course, this case can have service levels attached to it. And this is exactly what we see in the first column here. So we see that this case came in via email. There's one new message in there. And this case has a service level of 3 days. So the system has recognized, hey, this is a, let me go in here, this is a logistics case. So this is the use case, the functional use case for logistics. And for the logistics department, for example, we have an SLA of 3 days, for what reason ever. It seems quite long here. And the system tells me a few more things. The system tells me, of course, who did send that email, what language is it in, subject of the email, but also a unique case ID. And also this is important because if the customer calls in after 6 or 7 weeks and has another question regarding that specific case, then you just need the case ID and you can directly pinpoint the case this customer is talking about. All right, what we also see, as mentioned, we see the different categories the system provided or the email is in. And this is already where the first piece of AI is included, because the way this email came into the logistics category is by artificial intelligence. So the system has learned that this specific use case, that specific question of a customer belongs to the logistics department, and in here the system has automatically assigned my user William Butterfly for that specific case because he's the best skilled agent available at the moment. And this is something when we just talk about the very beginning of every inbound process into your contact center, this is something that helps a lot, because it is not only based on rules or static configurations that you have in the system. You can, of course, do this as well. For example, let's say everything that comes from itix.com or thinkowl.com shall go into a certain category. That's fine. That will work. But as you all know, communication changes. Customers start using different words, different wordings, and it's very hard to keep up with the keywords to have the proper routing. And this is something where the system, the AI, takes over, because the AI is reading the whole email. It's not looking for specific keywords. It's understanding the content, and based on the content, it can put the case into the correct category so that you can make all the other decisions, responsibility, SLA, and all that stuff based on that category, for example. But I can also say, okay, I know exactly that this is not needed today, so I can also reschedule that case. If I want to say, hey, directly from my mail inbox, I want to reschedule that case for example, tomorrow at 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. or whatever, I can reschedule that call or assign it to somebody else. And they say, hey, this is more a legal thing here. I assign it to my legal team, and so on. All right, the last information before we jump into the actual case. We see, of course, the case is open at the moment. And this is, I think, what is quite helpful. You directly see what's going on, because these little arrows here, they point out that at the moment I have 2 incoming messages in that case. I have 1 outgoing message and 0 forwarded messages. So I, for example, as a supervisor, can immediately see what's going on and yeah, can see the whole communication aggregated on a high level in here. All right, let me jump into one of my cases here, and let's take this case from second case from Ella Smith here. We have 3 hours to work on that. I picked this case manually now. So what the system also offers is a so-called guided mode, that the system makes a decision which case is the next urgent one to work on for which agent. And this is a very helpful functionality to, first of all, avoid cherry picking, and secondly to have a good load balancing, so to say, between all the agents, so that you can make sure that everyone is working on 100%, and you have a good chance to stay within your SLA. All right, let me open that specific case here. So this is an initial case. The customer has sent that specific email here, and what do we see? A lot. But let me go through it step by step. So we see 3 different areas, 3 different panels in here. Let's start with the central panel. This is pretty much the customer question. We see the email address, we see where it's coming from, we see that the customer has a question, so there seems to be a problem with the invoice. So what to do? First of all, before I even start answering that email, let's jump to the right side, because what we see in here is already very helpful. We see my customer, Ella Smith. By clicking on that, I would go into the customer profile, but this isn't even needed, because I can immediately see, hey, this customer in my system has 2 cases open, 1 case is in pending, and 9 resolved cases. So pretty much with one click on these buttons here, I can immediately see what's going on in my system and what's going on with that customer. So this is a very helpful tool functionality to get an overview and avoid duplication of work and so on, so pretty much get a full picture of that customer in the current correspondence. What you also see on the right side are the so-called custom forms, and those forms can be configured easily via drag and drop by a supervisor, by a manager, whoever is responsible, and are used to guide your agents through a specific process. For example, for the category orders, the team has, or the supervisor has decided that an agent needs to fill out these information like invoice number, due date, and so on. But we see, hey, this is already populated, so where the data coming from? And this is something then where AI hits the second time, because the AI in here has learned that, for example, this thing that's highlighted in here is a so-called customer or invoice number in here. So the system learned that, extracted it automatically. And what the system also did is it reached out to a backend system, like a CRM system, Salesforce, SAP, Pega, whatever you have in place, and tried to verify these information, so to make sure that this is really a valid invoice number. And it started to enrich additional data to my case to pretty much provide all the information your agent needs at the moment he's working on that case in ThinkOwl, so that the agent doesn't even have to go into SAP or into Salesforce anymore to verify the information, because all those information are already here, except due date, but we will see later on what happens if I'll try to use it anyway. And I think this is also something where you see this saves not only time, in best case, this can also save you some expensive seats or user accounts with the CRM companies. So I think, for example, one of our biggest customers, I think they save 2,500 seats or 2,500 user accounts in SAP. And if you know what they charge per user, you can do the math. This was a very high cost saving for them. All right, let's go all the way to the left, because now it's getting interesting. Because this is what I will call the so-called AI panel in here. And the system now starts to help you with certain information to reduce your average handling time, to make your agents more efficient, and of course also to ensure quality. Because what the system does is, when we talk about the smart responses, it suggests a so-called smart response in here and says, hey, I have a perfect answer for that specific question. So the system now says, here, this is a perfect answer, dear, then something cryptical, customer name, thank you very much for your message, and so on. We are sorry for the inconvenience, and so on and so on. So this is what we call a smart response, because the system has learned that this specific response template that a supervisor or manager created is the best matching answer for that specific question, so that the agent doesn't even have to type the answer anymore. So he just starts working on the reply, and just let me add this little smart response to my draft reply, and there we see what's happening with the due date. Because if you remember, the due date is still missing because maybe it wasn't available in the CRM system. So I have to provide this manually here. Let's say now my laptop screen is a little bit too small. So let me say I want to have it on this date. And what you can directly see is everything is populated and answered automatically. So the system pulled all the information that we got from your CRM into the response with pretty much one click, and you have a final answer ready, and yeah, you can send this answer out right away within a few seconds instead of having to type the whole thing by yourself within, let's say, 2 or 5 minutes in worst case. All right, but what else is happening? Because you see there's a lot more on the left side. Let's go into documents and articles. So for example, the system comes with a knowledge base and a document base where you can create your own articles, you can upload your documents, and the system then, the same mechanism like with the smart responses, learns that, hey, for that specific case here, there is a perfect attachment or a perfect information for the agent that might help the agent to solve that specific case quicker and more efficient, or contains a valuable information for the customer, like for example here, the credit card conditions, just as a little reminder, add them to the email and send it out to my customer. And of course, and this is something that really comes effective when you have expert questions that maybe are not available as a smart response, or that where even the documents and how-to articles don't help, then the system looks into its own database and say, how are there similar email cases or similar cases across all the channels that have the same content, and where there might be already an answer existing, so that the agent can get an idea from other agents what they did, how they solved that case, how they replied to the customer, and so on. All right. Having that said, so you see with pretty much a couple of clicks you can answer the whole question right away, and I assume, or I'm sure that you will see that this decreases your average handling time and your costs significantly. But there is much more to come. So for example, let me quickly answer that specific question, but I do not want to resolve it. I want to keep it open. So I just reply to my customer here and leave the case open because maybe, or as we've seen here, I didn't trigger the invoicing yet. Or let's assume this is a complaint, so something is not working. So maybe we need to think about another process. So but before we continue, what you can maybe see here is also how the communication is structured or visualized. Because, and this is I think a very nice thing, you see questions coming in from the left side, you see answers from different customers or from different agents coming in from the right side. You can also make a comment if you want to, and just go down here and say, okay, let's say called customer, everything okay. Mark this as a private comment, so this comment will never be visible to the customer. So also quite important, you can also upload internal documents if you want to, or you can make that comment visible to the customer if you want to. So this is completely up to you. All right, so now let's assume the customer is unhappy. It still doesn't work, or the product we shipped is broken or whatever else, and he wants to escalate this whole thing and wants to have a refund. Usually for agent, especially if we're talking about first level agent, this is a quite challenging task because an escalation and the refund process is a very tricky thing, and they usually don't know what exactly to do, or they have to look it up and so on. And also here, does ThinkOwl help you? Because ThinkOwl comes with something that we call the Business Process Modeling Designer, based on a standardization, ISO standardized BPMN 2.0, Business Process Modeling Notation 2.0 standard language that enables you, by just drag and drop, create own business processes to either guide users through a process, or even automate complete processes out of the box. But yeah, as this is a little webinar here, let me show you how the interaction with an agent looks like, because showing automation is always a little tricky here. So let's have a look into our run button, because this is exactly where my little process is hidden, and we see, hey, there is a process refund request. That means everything I show you now is completely invisible for the agent. The agent only needs to know if there's a refund request or complaint, start that process, and you're good. Or let's have a look. What we see now, the system confirms, hey, the process has started. So I'm a little confirmation, but what we see on the left side, the system starts asking me questions, because maybe to make a decision in the process, the system needs to know maybe the customer number, customer category, and so on. So obviously those information haven't been available in the CRM, so we have to fill them out, and so on, or mark this as a refund, and so forth. So let me show you how a process looks like, and this is already a very complex process based on an existing customer, but I'll walk you through it real quick. So because we can, at every point in the process, we can review the process. And what we see in here is a typical complaint process. So we have a complaint, and based on my first decision, if this is a complaint and they want a refund or if they want a replacement, the process goes left or right. If it goes left, for example, they set a keyword, they assign it to a new supervisor, for example, they collect a couple of other data, and so on. So it's pretty much the process guides or controls the flow from the case or of the case through the system, and it's not the user who does need to know what to do. It is all about the process and the one who designed the process to decide, okay, if this is a refund, go to a manager for approval, for example. You can do also things like, if the approval amount is above $20,000, you go to another manager just based on a 4i principle for another confirmation, and so on. And what we see all the way to the end here, that you can also have automated emails or automated interactions being triggered. So for example, in here we send out an automated email to our product management to inform them about a known error. But you can also trigger events in your CRM system, for example. When we go back to our initial case, you could create a process here. If everything is okay and the approval is there, just reach out to Salesforce and trigger the billing for that customer automatically. So all of this is possible, and I think what you can see in here, as soon as we talk about standardization, this tool is also very helpful, because this really helps you, first of all, to introduce standards in your communication internally, but also externally, or especially externally. And it gives you a transparency, and really, you can even force your agents to stick to the process. So if you really configure the system that way, that you say, hey, the agent is not even allowed to do anything else or to send an answer to my customer without having all these information provided, and pretty much run through the whole process. So, and this is really something that really helps, in improving quality, standardization, and transparency in the company. All right, let me close this real quick. And while we're talking about transparency, maybe one more thing to show before I go on with the next topic there is what we call the activity log. Because also this is something what I think is very important, because here you can see everything that happened to a specific case, as said, across all the channels, on a timeline basis. And what you also see, it's not only giving me information who did what change in my system, it also provides system changes. And this is very important as soon as we talk about, for example, compliance. If you want to prove that everything that happened to a case, or you have to prove everything that happens to a case, this is something that helps, because there is actually no chance to do anything with the case, even from a system automated perspective, without leaving a trace in here. So also that, for maybe all the participants from Europe, as soon as we talk about GDPR, for example, this is a very helpful feature also to prove that you are compliant within your process, combined, of course, with the, for example, business process modeling designer. All right, let me go back into our inbox here and leave this case for a moment, because there's maybe just one or two more things I'd like to show before we jump into the reporting. And the main purpose is pretty much to show you how easy it is to pretty much use the tool. So for all of those of you who think, okay, nice tool, powerful, but it will take me forever and be very expensive to set up all these processes, all these configurations, and so on. There I can assure you this is not the case. ThinkOwl is designed in a way that it pretty much enables the business users, the managers, the supervisors of a contact center to do pretty much everything by themselves. You don't need your IT to make every single or to change or modify a single decision or workflow here. This is all, or this can all be done by you directly. So let me give you one or two more examples here how easy it is. For example, when I go into my administration, and we see there's a lot of administration going on here, but let me point out, for example, the so-called dispatcher rules. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have AI in the system. AI is quite powerful in the system, but sometimes you want to override the AI because, for example, if you say everything that comes from, let's say, American Airlines should go to a specific group. I don't want to have the AI make a decision based on, for example, the content. I don't care. Everything should go to a specific group. And this is something you can do with these so-called dispatcher rules. And let me quickly create a new one here just to show how it goes. Let's say it's my AA rule. There you can say, okay, what do I want to do? For example, I want to say everything that comes from a customer where the customer name includes or contains, let's say, American Airlines. Then I have some optional conditions. I will jump over this right now. But you can also say, okay, as soon as it comes from American Airlines, add a keyword. Yeah, we wanted to assign it to a group. So add it to the group, okay, e-commerce. Could be aerospace, would be a better group, but not available at the moment. But you can also do other things. For example, you can say, okay, if it comes from American Airlines, I want to set, let's say, a priority, for example, because this is my most important customer and I want to make it urgent right away. And you see, with pretty much 2 clicks, I have configured the rule that's immediately effective to route all the mails from American Airlines to my group, e-commerce, and yeah, have the priority as an urgent case here. So hopefully, hopefully you agree, very simple. All right, last thing on the configuration, and as said, there's a lot more as you can see here, but let me show you the business processes, because also that is very easy. And I think if you remember the process that I showed before, this is already a little bigger process, but it's quite easy to create those. So let me create a new one here. So I create a new business process. I have my little starting point here, and in the first step, maybe I want to make a user decision. Let's say, okay, I'm missing an example now. Let's refund or not. Let's go with my old example again. And you say, okay, this is the first task. I want to make it a user task. So no automated task, I make it a user task. What shall this first task do? It shall complete, or the user shall complete the process form, and then I can select one of the forms I have configured in the system before. For example, known error, whatever this is. All right, so what's next? I can go left. Let's just call it left for the moment, or just go right if I want to. So I can make a decision here, go left or right, based on the information, for example, the agent provided in that first in that first task here. And as soon as the user goes right, I want to make it a service task. And even here, as said, this is not automation. So I want to send an email. For example, send email. What else do we have? Where is it? Send a smart response as an email to my customer. And I'll take here refund approval for what reason ever. And you see, with pretty much 1 click, I automated the communication with the customer. So as soon as somebody selects a refund in here, the system automatically triggers my right to tree here and says, hey, send an email with that smart response to my customer right away. There's nothing more to do. Your agent doesn't even have to type the email anymore or even review it. So also, and I hope this shows you, it's very easy, it's very basic to configure those workflows and automate your contact center actually. All right, we have a few minutes left, and therefore I want to switch to our reporting section. And therefore, let me go into our reporting desk that is called Discover, and there we go. So Discover reporting, as mentioned at the beginning, two main purposes. First of all, we of course have the standard KPI reportings. We have average handling time, one-touch email, first-time resolution, all that stuff. It's in the system, but I would say for today, I would mark it not as boring, but not as exciting as what I want to show you now, because this is what I would call the AI analytics reporting. And the AI analytics reporting has one main purpose. You can assume the AI analytics is reading through all your incoming emails into your contact center and is trying to understand what is in that contact center, what is in that email, and then making those information, aggregate them to so-called topics, like we see here, for example, issue, work, risk, and so on, making those information available on a dashboard, and then you can dig into the data depending on the question you have. So for example, let me scroll down here a little bit and just show you. For example, this is based on a very famous sample case we have in here called Enron. Nice data set that's available. So we imported all the emails and said, okay, out of these 60,000 emails in here, 1,200 emails are talking about the risk. So let's have a look. Just click on it. And when these 1,200 people are talking about the risk, or emails are talking about the risk, 87 of them are talking about the risk with a deal. So with pretty much one click, you reduce the emails you want to review down to 87 that might have a risk with a deal. Or more on a contact center perspective, let's put these information on a timeline like we have in here. And let me zoom in a little bit to make it more visible. Oops, not up. I want to zoom in. For example, like this one here. Put the topics on the timeline. And this is what I meant before, proactive reporting. Because here, the system is reading through all your communication that's incoming and gives you an overview. Hey, there's a peak in people that talk about an issue. I should investigate further what's going here. And this is something that is not possible with specific KPI reportings, because if you're not aware of a problem, you cannot report it. And this is what I would always call, pretty much giving you insights into your own communication and using these data to pretty much make conclusions, take action, and improve, for example, the service quality or react to occurring problems or upcoming problems proactively. There's a lot more in that system that you can use, but for today, I would say let's keep it with that. As the time is nearly over, I would say thank you very much for your attention. I hope this was a not too fast but very helpful overview what AI actually can do in a contact center environment, but also in any other kind of communication-oriented environment in your company. And I'm looking forward to some questions now. We already have a first question. Let me see. All right. Maybe to answer that question real quick. Yeah, of course, like mentioned at the beginning, the system is a cloud-based offering. That means it's all available out of the cloud. Also in terms of data residence, we can ensure that your data never leave the US. And it's a high availability system based on the latest technology, for example, microservices, HTML5, to pretty much ensure the highest availability possible. All right, I see people raising their hands, but you have to put in your question, otherwise I can't see it. All right. The next question regarding call center compatibility, especially regarding Avaya or Cisco. Yeah, exactly. So this is possible. So we can connect to all the typical ACD contact center or call center providers you have on the market, and pretty much integrate their phone connectivity into ThinkOwl and make those data, but also the calls available in ThinkOwl, so that you have a seamless integration with all these contact centers and do not have to, as mentioned at the beginning, use 2 or 3 different systems at the same time anymore. So yeah, quick answer, yeah, this is possible. All right, so we're already 1 minute over, so thank you very much for your attention. I see there are a lot more questions to come, so I'll answer those questions after via email after this webinar. And yeah, thanks again for your attention today. And if there are any questions, maybe not today, but tomorrow or whenever, please feel free to contact me at any time. And yeah, I wish you a good rest of the day, and goodbye.